All right, Mr. Skinner, again, my name is Kelly James. I appreciate you taking the time to speak with us. And the first thing we wanted to talk, it's been a couple of years since we've spoken with you. And, you know, and things have changed dramatically since then. Since the last time we spoke with you, you got that last-minute stay of execution, which, from reading at the time, you were prepared. You thought that was it.
I was just telling Alan Turner of the Houston Chronicle. We were discussing that, and I was over there eating my last meal, and at that time, that's when the thing was going on with Michael Richard in the CCA, and Sharon Keller had made that statement, we close at 5, it's not a policy, it's a fact. And so I look up there at the clock, I'm eating my last meal, I'm talking to my daughter on the phone, and it's 5:13. And so I thought, you know, it just echoed in my mind, we close at 5. And I thought to myself, if a state court closes at 5 o'clock, you know the highest court in the land does. And my lawyers had already come to see me at 3:30 that afternoon and told me the state courts had denied all my appeals, that only action we had was in the United States Supreme Court, and if they didn't stay it, it was over with. And so at 5:13, I said, that's it, it's a wrap, I'm dead, you know what I mean? And I mean, I knew that, you know, there was no getting out of it, you know what I'm saying? And so I said, well, you know, finish enjoying your meal, this is it. You know, you're fixing to get on the bus to go to wherever, right? But you're on your way out of here. And so I did not know this at the time, but the Supreme Court issued the stay at 5:13. At the exact time I was sitting there, well, I take that back. Yeah, well, yeah, it was 5:13 because, yeah, they were there. See, they're on Eastern Standard Time. They're in Washington, D.C. And they were there at 6:13, it was for them, but we're on Central Time. So 5:13, they issued the stay, and it took like 20 minutes for it to filter down. It was 23 minutes till 6 when they finally got the word from the AG's office in the death house, and they told me that I wasn't going to die. And at that time, the chaplain had told me that he had to take the phone away from me because at 5:30 all the calls quit. And so I said, well, can I call my lawyer? I want to see what's happened, you know, just to hear him tell me you're dead, right? And so he let me call my lawyer, and my lawyer said he had just gotten off the phone with the United States Court Clerk's office, and they had told him of the stay. And he had been up for like 2 days filing stuff, so I mean, he was just really give out, you know what I'm saying? He said the phone never rang. He heard 2 clicks, and then I was on the phone. And I was saying, hello, hello, Doug. He said, Hank? I said, yeah. He goes, you have the most uncanny timing of any man I have ever known in my life.
Well, timing was kind of important at that time.
Yes, it was. And so he told me, I just got off the phone with the clerk of the Supreme Court. They stayed an hour late to do your case. They have given you a stay. And when he said that, even to this day, when I just repeated it, I just felt that wash all over me, you know, like, I mean, it was just, my hands and my feet went numb. My head started buzzing. I couldn't hear. I dropped the phone. I slid down the wall and started crying. And I could hear him in the distance saying, hello, hello, hello. And so the chaplain, he had the phone sitting in a chair outside the death watch cell, and he pulled the receiver back, and he goes, yeah, he's all right. He's just having a moment. You must have told him some news. And he said, yeah, he got to stay. And so he was glad too, because he wasn't going to have to go in there in the death chamber with me and watch somebody else die. And so then it went for a week or two, them kicking the can down the street. We didn't know what they were going to do, and they finally decided to hear it, and of course I won it. And the most amazing thing about that is during the time of the pendency of that appeal, they were consulting with esteemed law professors and deans of law universities all across the nation, Loyola and Lewisburg and several others, Columbia, and they were all saying, there's no way he can win. He's foreclosed by Osborne, you know. And we knew that that was not true, but that's what they were saying. They were saying there's no way he can win this. I don't know why the Supreme Court, now they're going to make a ruling specific to death row that's like Osborne, and they didn't. They ruled exactly opposite. And the most amazing thing about that is that the Chief Justice, John Roberts, voted on our side. He was the one who authored the opinion in Osborne. And so, I mean, you're talking about a miracle. You know what I'm saying?
Well, yeah, I imagine that's would be the pinnacle of what we could get here.
Well, you know,
miracles go.
Yeah, well, that was one good miracle. Now, if they can just finish testing this evidence and prove somebody else done this, not me, that would be the greatest miracle of all, wouldn't it, after 20 years? And we are well on our way to doing that.
Well, it's been a couple of years since that ruling came down, almost 2 years ago.
Yes.
And last year you got some good news as far as them saying, yes, they would finally agree to test it. And And at the time, a lot of people were saying, why didn't they just do that to begin with, save all this time?
Because they knew it was not going to prove me guilty. You know, the district attorney that prosecuted me is dead. And I don't want to speak ill of the dead, okay? But I didn't like him at all. I used to work for another lawyer who he partnered with, and so he and I have never gotten along. But you know, once he was an elected official in a small town up there, and once he had set the train on the tracks and started it rolling, there was no way for him to back up and say, wait a minute, I made a mistake. You know, I've never been in that position, and so I want to fault him for that and say, hey man, you know, once you realized you screwed up, you should have straightened it out. But you know, he knew. We have documents out of his file that were given to us after his passing. Okay, so we have documents out of his file that prove that he knew at the time that the blood and hair clutched in the victim's hand was not mine. He outright lied about that to the media, and we later obtained through open records request and discovery the underlying electronic data from that testing, and we had the gene screen analyst come on the stand in the federal hearing and testify, and he said that, you know, he just admitted that he dropped the ball and made a mistake. And so, I mean, I almost died because of that. You say your name is Kelly?
Kelly.
Yeah, I almost died because of that, Mr. Kelly. So, I mean, you know, you'd have to excuse me if I kind of hold a resentment against the state for doing this to me.
That's completely understandable.
But,
and I want to talk some about that testing, because in November, the Attorney General comes out and releases results of the testing. And you know, they point to 10 pieces of evidence out of 40 that put you in the home. What would you say to that?
I say that mere presence in the state of Texas doesn't prove guilt. I live there. I had every right to be there. The state is misleadingly saying, like, they called it Miss Busby's home. It wasn't Miss Busby's home. It was our home. We lived there together. You know what I'm saying? I touched everything in that house at one point or another. If you were in your own home, do you walk around every day saying, gee, somebody might be dead next week, I better not touch this? You know what I mean? It's ridiculous. What is probative and what the state is not saying is that they found a DNA sample on a blood stain on the carpet in the bedroom in front of the bed right where the boys were killed that is a third-party DNA mixed with their blood. Okay, the only way that could happen is if he was involved in the killing. Okay, the second thing is the murder weapon, the knife, has got the DNA of 2 of the sons and a third unknown individual, the same profile. It's a partial profile. Okay, so what they're doing now is they're doing additional testing called Minifiler to try to amplify that profile and get a more complete profile so they can upload it to the CODIS database. Okay, and the CODIS database, you have to have so many markers. There are 16 markers, and I think you have to have 11 out of 16 in order to upload it or something. There's a minimum, okay, for you to be able to upload to their database. And to show you the similarity, Michael Morton, who was just found innocent and exonerated and released, this same thing happened to him. His case, this really upset me, because when I read the Pamela Koloff story in Texas Monthly, The Innocent Man, Part 1 and 2, it was like reliving a nightmare. The same thing that happened to him is what happened to me, and I mean the police treated it in the same way and everything. It made me cry sitting there reading that story, realizing what that poor man had been through, because he's been through the same thing I have, but it happened to him before it happened to me. His case was in 1988, mine was in 1993. The Nina Morrison of the Innocence Project talks about the same thing, that the degraded DNA profile. His son told his grandmother days after the murders that it wasn't Daddy, it was a monster with a mustache. And as you know now, they have arrested that guy, I forget what his name is, Norwood, Michael Norwood. And he had a big old mustache at the time, exactly as the son said, you know. And Nina Morrison of the Innocence Project, they had that same problem with the degraded DNA because they waited so long to test it. And they finally were able to amplify that sample by one locus. If it had been one locus less, it would not have been upgraded. And not only did Norwood kill Mr. Morton's wife, right around the corner and up the street a month and a half later, he killed another woman in that same neighborhood. And so they have proven that now. And so, you know, but he spent 25 years of his life locked up for something he didn't do. And so,
well, and he says this is something he knows he didn't do, but in your case, you don't really know.
Yes, I do know that I didn't do it.
Okay.
Of course I know that I didn't do it.
Because from earlier reports that I'd read that you were passed out. And
That's true.
You didn't remember.
Well, I don't remember what happened to the victims because I was passed out on the couch. But after it was over with, the oldest son routed the killer out of the house and woke me off the couch and got me dressed, and we left the house together. So, you know, I remember from that point forward what happened, you know, but as far as what happened to the killings or who did it or why, no, I don't know anything about that because I was passed out on the couch.
Well, and the reason I bring that up is because when you look at a case like yours and you look at the evidence that is presented in the case, and then you look at evidence that is not presented in the case that could possibly exonerate you, do you feel like there's evidence in this case? I'm asking specifically about the jacket.
Of course. That jacket was 8 sizes too big for me. We have a report from the criminalist who examined that evidence, and he says that jacket has medium velocity blood impact spatter all over the cuffs and the forearms of the sleeves, indicating that it was worn by the assailant. The jacket has sandy blonde hairs in the collar of it and sweat stains in the armpits, okay? The jacket is a man's extra large 44 to 46. It's 8 full sizes too big for me. I could use it for a pup tent. So of course, but the state has mysteriously lost that. The one piece of evidence that was absolutely certain to exonerate me, the state has lost it. But that's not all. There was blood, there was footwear impression prints in the blood by her head. Whoever was standing over her killed her. Okay, it's a size 11-12 boot. And the boot tread wear on it was American Technic or American Polytechnic. I sent that, we developed, we had a photogrammetrist in New Mexico develop those photographs, and we sent them to the world's leading footwear impression specialist, William Eckert, Dr. William Eckert, who is in Louisiana. He's the one who did the Lockerbie, Scotland air crash.
Oh, yeah, I'd heard that name.
The TV show Quincy, if you remember that, you're old enough to remember that. He is the model for that show, and he was a consultant on that show, okay? So he is the one who developed that footwear impression for us and told us that it is an American Polytechnic boot, okay? I wear a size 9, all right? And I had on no shoes that night. The oldest son was barefooted in his underwear. The youngest son never got out of bed. Twyla had little dainty feet. She was skinny like olive oil. She had small feet. And so I can't remember if her shoes were on her feet or not, but they're not 11-12 boots and they weren't Polytechnic. So I mean, from the outset, they know that someone else did this and that there's evidence of someone else. A cassette tape with blood on it found by her head in front of the TV entertainment center has a DNA profile of an unknown male individual. Okay, and now of course we've developed 2 more. But the thing about the state's advisory, nowhere in their advisory do they admit to that or mention it whatsoever. Why don't you ask them why that is? You know, the knife that they claim is a murder weapon has the DNA of a foreign male on it. The knife, the handle of the knife. So I mean, come on, man. In the state misuses the facts of the case or misrepresents them to say that I was there, that means I had something to do with it. You know, how do you make that leap? Where do you get that from? And it's because they don't have any evidence to prove that I did anything, and they even admitted that at trial. The stains that they tested on my clothes were contact stains. My shirt, the shirt that I was wearing was Randy's. Twyla was killed in the living room floor in front of the Christmas tree. The chair to the side of where her head was on the other side of the coffee table was where my pants were hanging. You know, I'd take my pants off, I had my belt, and I had a wallet, a trucker wallet with a chain, you know, and the keys and stuff hanging up. So I didn't want to spill all the stuff out of my pocket, so I would take my pants off and fold them over so the stuff wouldn't fall out of my pocket. So when I got up and I could just step back into them and put them back on, you know. So they were hanging on the chair, and the shirt that I put on was Randy's shirt, the youngest son's. He had pulled a dining room chair into the living room to watch TV with us because the Christmas tree had displaced his chair. And so he was sitting on that dining room chair, and he had taken his shirt off and hung it on the back of that chair. That was 18 inches from where Twyla was killed. The pants were less than 24 inches from where she was killed. And so I don't doubt, you know what I'm saying, that blood was splattered on them or that they got contact stains on them, you know. But when I got up off the couch, do you think I stopped to think, well, that's got blood on it, I better not put it on? I mean, my only thought was to get out of there, you know what I'm saying? Because the oldest son told me they're coming back.